Writers effectively explain or teach their claim in evidence. Your informational essay is going to consist of 5 paragraphs. You'll have your introductory paragraph, your body paragraph, 1, 2, and 3, and then your concluding paragraph. So far, you've practiced writing different kinds of hooks, chosen a hook, and written your introductory paragraph. You've also started outlining your piece, and you already have your 3 topic ideas. Really quickly, I want you to pull out this sheet so that you have it ready to go. You're going to need it in order to write your body paragraph. And you also need to turn to a clean page in your grammar and craft section in order to write your body paragraph. Title that page body paragraph number 1. All right, let's get started. One thing you should know during this whole process is by the end of this video, you should have written 1 full body paragraph. I'm going to put up little pause signs, and when I ask you to pause, please pause and write that sentence or section. So today we're going to start with our transition and our topic sentence. So the topic sentence is basically what the claim for the paragraph is. It's what you're arguing, and it's what you're going to teach in your paragraph. Your transition is going to transition you from the introduction to your topic sentence and provide a bridge between your previous paragraph and this paragraph. Since this is my first body paragraph, my transition is actually going to transition me from my introductory paragraph to my first body paragraph. Okay, let's see what this looks like. Really quickly, I'm going to look at my outline. My outline has agricultural practices that are resistant to climate change as my first topic sentence. I am going to write this into a sentence that will probably talk about one of the needs for sustainable development. So this is what I wrote. I wrote, Chad is in need of agricultural practices that are resistant to climate change. That is my topic sentence. It talks about my problem. It talks about one of the needs that I have. If I go back really quick and look at my the ending of my introduction, it talks about the needs that I have for sustainable development. So I'm going to transition from this idea to just my one idea of agricultural practices. So my transition will look like this. It's going to build a bridge between these 2 yellow parts. So in order to help alleviate is just a fancy word of saying to make it easier. In order to help alleviate some of the effects of poverty, developing sustainable agriculture and livestock is key to helping increase jobs and provide food security for Chad. So this is how I move from my idea of my need for sustainable development to the specific need of agricultural practices and how important that is. So I'm going to have you pause right here and go ahead and write your transition sentence and your first topic sentence. All right. Let's now write our introduction to our evidence and our evidence. So when I introduce my evidence, I'm going to introduce the author, the title, and then any other relevant information. That might include information about the source or the topic of the text or study. You might check out the different types of ways to introduce the evidence below in the Schoology page. And then when you put your evidence, you'll put it in quotation marks. Don't forget those. And you'll include your author's last name or the source. So if you don't have the author's last name, you can just write the source. So first I'm going to show you my evidence, and then I'm going to introduce it. So my evidence is recently changes in climate have brought lower rainfalls, and consistent overuse has led to soil erosion and land degradation. Farmers lack infrastructure, support, and resources needed to grow sufficient food. So in order to introduce this evidence, I'm going to pull this out really quick so you can see it. I'm going to look at this. I'm going to decide which one of these examples I want to use. I'm going to use the first one for today. So according to the author in an article titled, and then I'm going to explain a little bit about that article so that you can understand a little bit before this piece of evidence. So this is how I introduce it. According to Farhanaz Muhammad, in his article titled Poverty in Chad, Muhammad discusses how a changing climate will more severely impact poverty in Chad. So I thought it was really important to highlight that how he discusses that climate change is going to make poverty way worse. I didn't think that it was as important to talk about like what those things are, what climate change is doing right now. I thought it was more important to talk about like how it's going to cause more poverty. So I'm going to have you pause right now. I'll leave this up so you can see it. I'm going to have you pause and write your evidence and then introduce that piece of evidence. Okay. So we're going to now write our explanation. Our explanation needs to be 4 to 6 sentences long. It should not be 2 to 3 sentences. It should be 4 to 6 sentences. In your evidence, you're going to describe that evidence in your own words. In your explanation, you're going to describe that evidence in your own words. You might include additional details that can help you explain the topic sentence. But by the end of your explanation, I should have a really strong understanding of the need that your country has. And I should really understand maybe some of the evidence behind that. And you are going to have to teach me that information. So in my explanation, I'm going to talk about like how does this problem of climate change like lead to poverty? So what is this problem? How does this problem affect poverty? And that might be something that you think about as you write. Like how are all of these problems that you're talking about really affecting poverty? And then like why do you need support in that area? So you really want to highlight that to me. And since my issue is about climate change, I'm going to explain the science behind climate change and how it's affecting the population. So this is how I write that explanation. With the rising temperatures and decrease in rainfall, Chadians are at risk of slipping further into poverty. So right away I talk about how with this problem, it causes more poverty. Chad is at risk of both floods and droughts, and climate change will only make matters worse. So I talk about what their problems are. I'm kind of explaining a little bit of my evidence there. Drier climate and soil make it nearly impossible to grow the amount of food needed. So here I'm kind of getting a little bit into the science and like how, climate change affects food growing. Since agriculture and livestock farming are the main sources of income for Chad's economy, more arid and increasing climates will affect Chad's ability to make money and provide jobs for its people. So now I'm transitioning from, hey, this is the problem. The problem is that, climate change is really affecting Chad, and I'm talking about specifically how it's affecting them. It's affecting their daily lives. It's affecting their ability to make money. And so it's causing more people, of course, to get into poverty. So in the coming years, Chadians will produce lower crop yields and have a harder time sustaining livestock. This will raise the poverty rate even higher. So in that final part, I really show you how, what this is going to do, how it's going to raise that poverty. So I'm going to have you pause right now and go ahead and write your explanation. Make sure to really think about like what it is you're teaching me or explaining to me. Remember, you're the expert. You might need to even go back into your article or your research so that you have more information that you might add here. Okay. All right. Final piece. So we're going to work on our concluding sentence. Our concluding sentence is basically just going to wrap up the idea of the paragraph, and it's going to connect it back to your controlling idea. So you really want to think about how does this paragraph support the larger argument, right? So my larger argument is that Chad has a number of needs for sustainable development. So I'm going to come back to that idea. I'm also going to look at the end of my explanation so I know how to write it. So I'm going to think about, okay, so I talked about poverty. I talked about the fact that they're going to have a really hard time. This is how I wrap it up. So Chad is in desperate need of support in helping find more sustainable agricultural practices that can help yield crops despite rising climates and decreased rainfall. So I go back to that need. This is one of their needs. I talk about how they need help with sustainable agriculture, right? I'm coming back to the idea that this is going to put them into poverty. Okay, this is going to be your last pause. I would like you to go right now and write your concluding sentence. If you feel like you are done and you need a teacher to check in with you, please bring that up to that teacher. Make sure you have all steps 1 through 6. You can go ahead and highlight them as you go. And at the end of this video, you can go ahead and watch it again to write paragraphs 2 and paragraph